sister and her husband moved in with my dad and lost it when I said no to babysitting their toddlers. That's when my brother-in-law jumped into the chat. Wow, real nice. Your sister is trying to make a better life for her family, and you're too selfish to help out. What's more important than family? Guess your fancy job means you're too good for us now. I was hurt and angry but decided not to engage further in the group chat. Instead, I called my sister directly. Big mistake. Look, I said when she answered, I'm not refusing to ever help with the kids. I'm just saying I can't commit to a regular schedule. My job. Your job, she interrupted. That's all you care about. Some of us have actual families to take care of, not just promotions to chase. That's not fair, I replied, trying to keep my cool. I love the kids, but I have responsibilities too. I can help sometimes, just not on a fixed schedule. God, you're so selfish, she spat. You know what? Forget it. We'll figure it out without your help. She hung up on me. I was fuming, but decided to let things cool down. Maybe she'd be more reasonable after thinking it over. The next day, Dad called me. He sounded stressed. Your sister is pretty upset, he said. Could you maybe help out just once or twice to keep the peace? And there it was. The family dynamic in a nutshell. My sister makes unreasonable demands, throws a tantrum when she doesn't get her way, and everyone else is expected to compromise to keep the peace. Dad, I said gently, I love you, and I love the kids, but I can't rearrange my entire work schedule to provide free childcare. And honestly, I'm concerned about how they're treating you. Are they contributing anything to the household? He sighed. They're going through a tough time. I know, Dad. But they're adults with children of their own. They need to take responsibility, not push it onto you and me. He didn't have a response to that, and we ended the call soon after. For the next few weeks, my sister gave me the cold shoulder. When I visited Dad, she'd either be mysteriously absent or would make passive-aggressive comments throughout the evening. I tried to maintain a relationship with the kids, bringing them small gifts and playing with them when I visited, but it was increasingly uncomfortable. Then came the day everything boiled over. I had a huge presentation at work, the kind that could make or break my career. I'd been preparing for weeks, and everyone at work knew how important it was. It was scheduled for a Wednesday at 2 p.m. That morning, at 8 a.m., my phone rang. It was my sister, and I almost didn't answer. But thinking it might be an emergency, I picked up. Hey, I need you to take the kids today, she said without even a hello. What? Today? I can't. I have that massive presentation I told everyone about. Well, we have an emergency, she insisted. A potential investor wants to meet with us about the business. This could be our big break. We can't bring toddlers to a meeting like that. I'm sorry, but I absolutely cannot miss this presentation, I explained. It's been scheduled for weeks, and the entire executive team will be there. Can you ask Dad? Dad has a doctor's appointment, she said. Look, this is an actual emergency. Your presentation can be rescheduled. No, it absolutely cannot, I replied, starting to get angry. This is my career we're talking about. And this is our future, she shouted. God, you're so self-centered. We're about to get an investment that could change our lives, and you won't help for one day. I would if I could, I said firmly, but I can't today. Maybe try a drop-in daycare? Or a babysitter? With what money? She scoffed. You know what, fine. I'll just tell the investor we can't make it because my sister is too selfish to help her own family. Hope you're happy. She hung up, and I tried to push the conversation out of my mind to focus on my presentation. At 1:30 p.m., just as I was reviewing my notes one last time before heading to the conference room, I got a text from my dad. Your sister dropped the kids off at my house anyway. Had to cancel my doctor's appointment. Everything okay? I was livid but had to compartmentalize. I called Dad quickly. I'm so sorry, I said. She told me you had a doctor's appointment and couldn't watch them. Well, I did, he sighed. But it's just a checkup. I can reschedule. Dad, this isn't right, I said, glancing anxiously at the clock. They're taking advantage of you. It's fine, he insisted, though he sounded exhausted. Good luck with your presentation. I barely had time to process before heading into my meeting. Somehow, I managed to nail the presentation, despite being distracted by anger and worry about my dad. My boss was thrilled, and it looked like I was on track for another promotion in the coming year. As soon as I was done, I drove straight to Dad's house, still in my work clothes. When I arrived, the scene was chaos. The toddlers were running around screaming, toys were everywhere, and Dad looked completely overwhelmed. My sister and brother-in-law weren't home yet. Have they called? I asked Dad after giving him a hug. Not yet, he said, trying to catch my nephew as he ran past with what looked like Dad's reading glasses. They said they'd be back by dinner time. I checked my watch. It was already 5:30 p.m. Let me help, I said, taking off my blazer and rolling up my sleeves. Together, Dad and I managed to get the kids fed, bathed, and settled down with a movie. At 7:45 p.m., I heard a car door slam. My sister and brother-in-law walked in, looking relaxed and happy. They didn't even have the decency to look apologetic. How did it go? Dad asked. Oh, it was amazing, my sister gushed. The investor loved our pitch. We went out to celebrate afterward. That's when I noticed they were carrying shopping bags from an upscale clothing store. You went shopping? I asked incredulously. While Dad had to cancel his doctor's appointment to watch your kids? My sister rolled her eyes. God, here we go again. Yes, we went shopping. The investor is taking us to a fancy dinner next week, and we needed appropriate clothes. It's an investment in our future. You lied to me, I said, feeling my anger rise. You said Dad had a doctor's appointment and couldn't watch the kids. Well, he did have one, she said dismissively, which he had to cancel because of you. I was nearly shouting now. And you told me this investor meeting was an emergency that couldn't be rescheduled, but somehow you had time to go shopping and out to dinner afterward? Don't you dare judge us. My brother-in-law stepped in. We're working hard to build something here. Sometimes sacrifices have to be made. Yes, but they're always someone else's sacrifices, aren't they? I shot back. Dad's time, Dad's money, my time, never yours. You have no idea what we're going through. My sister screamed. Not everyone has a cushy office job like you. We're trying to build a business from nothing. A business? I laughed. You mean your Instagram account where you post about products no one is paying you to promote, and his dropshipping scheme that hasn't sold a single item. That hit a nerve. My sister's face contorted with rage. You think you're so much better than us, don't you? She hissed. With your promotion and your fancy condo. Well, at least I have a family. At least I'm not going to die alone like you probably will. I was stunned into silence by the viciousness of her attack. I think you need to leave, Dad said quietly, surprising all of us. He rarely asserted himself, especially with my sister. Fine, she snapped, grabbing her purse. Come on, let's get the kids. No, Dad said, his voice firmer now. I mean, you need to leave my house. Take some time to cool off. The kids can stay here tonight. My sister looked like she'd been slapped. She opened her mouth to argue, but Dad cut her off. I'm tired, he said. I've had a long day. Please, just go. Shooting me a venomous look, my sister and brother-in-law stormed out. The door slammed behind them and the house fell silent except for the movie still playing in the living room. Dad slumped onto a kitchen chair, suddenly looking every one of his 68 years. I'm sorry about that, he said. She had no right to speak to you that way. It's not your fault, I assured him, sitting down beside him. But Dad, this situation isn't sustainable. They're taking advantage of you. He nodded slowly. I know. They're my grandkids. And I worry about what would happen to them if I put my foot down. We'll figure something out, I promised, squeezing his hand. But this can't continue. They need to start taking responsibility for themselves and their children. Little did I know then just how bad things would get before they got better. After that blow-up, things became even more tense. The next morning, my sister and brother-in-law returned to pick up the kids, acting like nothing had happened. No apology, no acknowledgement of their behavior, nothing. Dad, ever the peacekeeper, tried to smooth things over, but the damage was done. I could see in his eyes that something had changed. I stayed away for about a week, giving everyone space to cool down. During that time, I decided I needed to understand what was really going on at Dad's house. So I called him almost daily, asking subtle questions about how things were going. What I learned was disturbing. The electricity bill came today, Dad mentioned during one call. Nearly double what it was before they moved in. Are they helping with that? I asked, already knowing the answer. Well, no, he admitted. They said they need to put all their money into their business right now. Another day. Had to go grocery shopping again. Those little ones sure can eat. Is my sister at least going with you? Helping carry bags? I asked. No. She's usually busy with her online classes, and he's always got meetings. The pattern was clear. They weren't contributing financially, weren't helping around the house, and were constantly busy with their supposed business ventures that never seemed to yield any actual income. Meanwhile, Dad was running himself ragged, taking care of their kids and footing the bill for everything. After 2 weeks of this, I decided to visit Dad when I knew my sister and brother-in-law would be out. I brought lunch and we sat at his kitchen table. "Dad," I said gently, "I've been thinking a lot about what happened. I'm really worried about you." He tried to brush it off. "I'm fine, honey, just a little tired." "No, you're not fine," I insisted. "You look exhausted, and I can see the bills piling up over there." I nodded toward a stack of envelopes on the counter. He sighed heavily. "It's been challenging, but they're family." "Can we take a look at the bills together?" I asked. "I just want to understand what's going on." Reluctantly, he agreed. What I saw shocked me. His electricity bill had indeed nearly doubled. Water usage was up significantly. The grocery receipts in his checkbook showed he was spending 3 times what he normally would on food. And there was a credit card statement showing several $100s at restaurants, gas stations, and clothing stores that I knew weren't Dad's expenses. "Are they using your credit card?" I asked, horrified. He looked away, embarrassed. "They said it was just until they got on their feet. They promised to pay me back." "Dad, this isn't right," I said, trying to keep my voice calm despite my growing anger. "They're taking advantage of your kindness. How much have they borrowed so far?" He hesitated, then pulled out a small notebook from his pocket. Inside, he'd been meticulously tracking every dollar they'd borrowed, over $3,000 in just 3 months. "Have they paid any of it back?" I asked. He shook his head. "And how much are they contributing to household expenses? Rent? Utilities? Groceries?" Another head shake. I took a deep breath. "Dad, this is financial abuse. They're exploiting you." "Don't use that word," he said quickly. "They're not abusing me. They're just struggling." "Then why do they have money for new clothes and dinners out, but not to help you with groceries?" I asked. "Why is your credit card being used for their expenses while you're canceling doctor's appointments to watch their kids?" He didn't have an answer for that. "I'm going to help you figure this out," I promised. "But first, I need to understand what rights you have. Can I talk to some people? Get some advice?" After some persuasion, he agreed. That night, I started researching. I learned about tenant rights and how they differ for family members living in a home without a formal lease. I read about financial elder abuse, though Dad would hate me calling it that. He's not that old and still very sharp. I found resources about setting boundaries with adult children. The next day, I called a couple of friends in relevant fields, one who works in real estate law and another who's a financial advisor. Without revealing too many personal details, I explained the situation and asked for their thoughts. My legal friend was clear. If there's no formal lease, your dad has more power than he realizes. They're essentially guests, and he can ask them to leave at any time. If they refuse, he can start eviction proceedings. My financial advisor friend was equally blunt. "This sounds like financial exploitation. Your dad needs to protect himself. Immediately. No more lending money, no more access to his credit cards. And if it's as bad as you say, he might want to consider updating his will and power of attorney to protect his assets." Armed with this information, I scheduled a meeting with an elder law attorney. The consultation was eye-opening. The attorney explained that what my sister and brother-in-law were doing wasn't just morally wrong. In some circumstances, it could be legally actionable. "Your father has options," the attorney explained. "He can establish a formal landlord-tenant relationship with a lease that specifies rent and responsibilities. Or, if he wants them to leave, he can give them notice. If they're not contributing and are causing him financial hardship, that strengthens his position." I took detailed notes and collected some informational pamphlets to show Dad. The attorney also recommended a financial advisor who specialized in helping seniors protect their assets. Before talking to Dad again, I wanted to gather more evidence of exactly what was going on in his house. So I started visiting more often, at different times of day, sometimes unannounced. What I observed confirmed my worst fears. On one visit, I arrived to find Dad doing laundry, not just his own, but piles of my sister's family's clothes. Another time, he was cleaning up a massive mess in the kitchen while my sister sat on the couch scrolling through her phone. Their kids were often running wild, with little supervision from their parents. I also noticed that while my sister and brother-in-law claimed to be out for business meetings or classes, Their social media told a different story. Posts showed them at restaurants, bars, or just hanging out with friends, all while Dad was watching their kids. And then I discovered something that made my blood boil. I overheard a phone conversation between my sister and a friend where she laughed about how easy it was to get free childcare and housing. "My dad is such a pushover," she giggled. "And my sister? She actually thought we had a meeting with an investor that day? As if anyone would invest in this stupid dropshipping thing. We just wanted a day off." I couldn't believe what I was hearing. They had deliberately lied about their emergency on the day of my presentation. There was no investor meeting. They just wanted free babysitting and got angry when I wouldn't provide it. That was the last straw. I knew I needed to take action, not just for Dad's sake, but because their behavior was completely out of control. I spent the next 2 weeks putting together a plan. I spoke with the elder law attorney again and scheduled a joint meeting for Dad to talk with both the attorney and a financial advisor. I gathered all the evidence I'd collected about their financial exploitation: copies of bills, the loan notebook, screenshots of their social media showing them out, enjoying themselves when they claimed to be working. Then I sat down with Dad for a difficult conversation. "Dad," I started gently, "I've been doing a lot of research and I'm really concerned about your situation with my sister and her family." He looked tired. "I know it's not ideal, but they're family." "Yes, they are," I agreed, "and families should help each other, not exploit each other. I have documented how much money they've taken from you, how they're not contributing to the household, and how they're not even honest about their activities." I showed him everything I'd found, including screenshots of their social media posts that contradicted their claims about working or attending classes. "They told me they were at a business meeting that day. I had to cancel my doctor's appointment," he said slowly, looking at a photo of them at a bar with friends, time-stamped during the supposed investor meeting. "I know," I said softly. "And I think it's time we got you some professional advice. I've scheduled a meeting with an attorney who specializes in situations like this. Will you come with me, just to learn about your options?" To my relief, he agreed. The meeting with the attorney and financial advisor was scheduled for the following week. In the meantime, things at Dad's house went from bad to worse. My sister must have sensed something was up because she became even more demanding and manipulative. She started telling Dad that she was concerned about his memory. There was nothing wrong with it. And suggesting that maybe she should take over his finances to help him. Classic signs of attempting to gain financial control. The day before our scheduled meeting with the professionals, Dad called me in a panic. "They're saying they need $5,000 for their business," he said, his voice shaking. "They say it's the last investment they'll need before they start making profits. They want me to take out a loan against my house." "Dad, please don't sign anything," I urged. "We have that meeting tomorrow. Just hold off until then." "They're being very pushy," he said. "Your brother-in-law said if I really loved them, I'd do this for them." "That's manipulation, Dad," I said firmly. "Please, just wait until tomorrow." He promised he would. The next day, I picked Dad up and drove him to the attorney's office. The meeting was comprehensive. The elder law attorney explained Dad's rights as a homeowner and the legal definition of financial exploitation. The financial advisor reviewed Dad's finances and showed him projections of how quickly his savings would be depleted if the current situation continued. "You have several options," the attorney explained. "You can establish formal boundaries with a written agreement that includes rent and bill contributions. Or, if you prefer, you can give them notice to leave. As the homeowner, that's your right." "But what about the grandkids?" Dad asked, his main concern as always. "Your grandchildren's welfare is important," the attorney acknowledged. "But enabling their parents' financial irresponsibility isn't helping the children in the long run. And you can still maintain a relationship with them without having them live in your home." The financial advisor was equally clear. Based on your fixed income and the current rate of expenditure, you'll exhaust your savings within a year if things continue this way. That's not sustainable, and it puts your own security at risk. By the end of the meeting, Dad looked both troubled and resolved. He turned to me as we left. "I think I need to ask them to leave," he said quietly. "But I'm afraid of how they'll react." "I'll be there with you," I promised. "We'll do it together." We decided to give them 2 weeks' notice, which was generous considering they weren't paying rent. The attorney helped us draft a simple letter stating that they needed to find other accommodation and that the financial support would end. But before we could even present this to them, things came to a head on their own. When we returned to Dad's house, my sister and brother-in-law were waiting, looking angry. "Where have you been?" my sister demanded. "We've been trying to reach you all morning about that loan." "I had an appointment," Dad said simply. "With who?" she pressed. "That's not really your concern," I interjected. My brother-in-law stepped forward aggressively. "It is our concern when we need his signature on loan papers today. The business opportunity won't wait." "I'm not taking out a loan against my house," Dad said, his voice firmer than I'd heard it in years. "In fact, we need to talk about your living arrangements." My sister's eyes narrowed. "What do you mean?" "I mean," Dad continued, "that this situation isn't working. You've been here for months, with no rent, no contributions to bills, and borrowing money without repaying it. I can't afford to support your family anymore." "This is your doing," my sister hissed at me. "You've always been jealous of me. You're turning Dad against us." "This isn't about me," I replied calmly. "This is about Dad's financial security. You're draining him dry." "How dare you?" she shouted. "We're family. Family helps each other." "Yes, they do," Dad agreed. "But this isn't helping. It's taking advantage. And it needs to stop." "So what are you saying?" my brother-in-law asked, his voice dangerously low. "I'm saying you need to find your own place," Dad said. "I've prepared a letter giving you 2 weeks' notice." He handed them the letter the attorney had helped draft. My sister snatched it, read it quickly, then tore it up, throwing the pieces in Dad's face. "You can't do this to us," she screamed. "We have nowhere to go. What about the kids?" "You have 2 weeks to figure it out," Dad replied, his resolve visibly strengthening in the face of their reaction. "And I'm canceling the credit card you've been using." My brother-in-law stepped toward Dad threateningly. "You're making a big mistake, old man." I stepped between them. "Back off, now. This is his house, and these are his decisions." "This is all your fault," my sister spat at me. "You've never wanted me to be happy. You've always been jealous that Mom and Dad love me more. Well, guess what? They did. Everyone knows it. You were always second best, and you still are." Her words were meant to hurt, and once upon a time they would have. But now I just felt sad for her. "This isn't about childhood rivalries," I said quietly. "This is about adult responsibilities. You have 2 children who depend on you. It's time you started acting like their parent." "Screw you," she snarled. "Come on, we're leaving, and we're taking the kids with us." "Now? Where will you go?" Dad asked, suddenly concerned. "Why do you care?" she shot back. "You're kicking us out anyway." "In 2 weeks," Dad clarified, "to give you time to find a suitable place." "Forget it," my brother-in-law said. "We're not staying where we're not wanted. But don't think this is over." They stormed upstairs to pack. Dad looked at me, worry creasing his face. "Did I do the right thing?" he asked. "Absolutely," I assured him. "They needed to hear this. And honestly, I'm proud of you for standing up for yourself." Within an hour, they had packed haphazardly and loaded the kids into their car. My sister refused to tell us where they were going, just that we'd regret this. As they drove away, Dad looked both relieved and heartbroken. "They'll cool down," I told him, though I wasn't so sure, "and they'll realize this is for the best." But the drama was far from over. Little did we know, my sister was already plotting her revenge. The day after my sister and her family left, I stayed at Dad's house to help him clean up. The place was a mess. They'd left in such a hurry that there were still toys scattered across the floor, dishes in the sink, and their bedroom looked like a tornado had hit it. As we cleaned, Dad was quiet, obviously processing everything that had happened. "You okay?" I asked as we tackled the mountain of laundry they'd left behind. He sighed. "I keep wondering if I made a mistake. Those are my grandkids after all." "You didn't make a mistake," I assured him. "You can still see the grandkids without being financially exploited. This was the right call, Dad. They were taking advantage of you." He nodded slowly. "I know. I just hope they're all right. She wouldn't even tell us where they were going." "They probably went to a friend's place," I said. "Or maybe a hotel. They have money for that, even if they claimed they couldn't afford to contribute here." We found out where they went the next day when Dad got a call from his sister, my aunt. "Your daughter and her family showed up at my doorstep last night," she told him. "She said you threw them out with nowhere to go. Is that true?" Dad explained the situation, including the financial exploitation and the fact that we'd offered them 2 weeks to find a new place. "I see," my aunt said, her tone changing. She conveniently left those details out. "Don't worry, I won't let them stay here long. I've got my own boundaries." It was a relief to know they were safe, at least. But the peace didn't last long. 3 days after they left, Dad received a certified letter. It was from a lawyer, claiming that my sister and her husband were seeking financial compensation for improvements they had made to Dad's house during their stay, as well as for emotional distress caused by the sudden eviction. The letter demanded $10,000. Dad called me immediately, panicking. "I can't afford this. What improvements? They didn't do anything but damage my house." "Calm down," I said, though I was seething inside. "This is a scare tactic. Let me call our attorney." The elder law attorney we'd consulted confirmed what I suspected. The letter was mostly bluster. "They have no case," she assured us. "They weren't tenants with a lease. They made no improvements, and you gave them notice. This is clearly an attempt to intimidate your father. I'll draft a response." The attorney's letter was firm and comprehensive, pointing out that not only did my sister have no legal claim, but that we had documented evidence of financial exploitation that could potentially lead to legal action against them. She made it clear that any further attempts to intimidate Dad would be met with a firm legal response, including potential counterclaims for the money they had taken. We thought that would be the end of it. We were wrong. A week after they left, Dad started getting calls from family members and old friends, all asking about the horrible way he had treated my sister. Apparently, she was telling everyone who would listen that Dad had suddenly thrown them out because I had convinced him they were a burden, that I was jealous of her family, and that Dad now refused to even see his grandchildren. Several relatives called to berate him. One elderly cousin even told him he should be ashamed of turning his back on family. Dad was devastated. "They're making me out to be a monster," he said, his voice breaking. "People I've known my whole life believe I'd throw my own grandchildren out on the street." I was furious. "This stops now," I told him. "We need to set the record straight." I sat down with Dad, and we drafted an email together, explaining the reality of the situation in calm, factual terms. We detailed the financial exploitation, the lack of contribution, the lies about working, and the fact that they had been given notice but chose to leave immediately. We included some documentation, copies of bills showing the dramatic increase, Dad's notebook, logging the loans they never repaid, even a few screenshots showing them out socializing when they claimed to be at business meetings. We sent this email to our closest family members, asking them to share the truth with anyone who had heard my sister's version of events. The response was immediate and overwhelmingly supportive. Many people reached out to apologize for believing my sister without hearing Dad's side. Several admitted that they had experienced similar behavior from her in the past. My aunt, who had initially taken them in, called Dad directly. "I owe you an apology," she said. "After seeing how they behave under my roof for just a week, I completely understand why you had to set boundaries. They expect everyone to cater to them while contributing nothing. I've told them they need to find their own place by the end of the month." This validation from family was exactly what Dad needed. His spirits lifted considerably, and he stopped worrying so much about what others thought. But my sister wasn't done yet. Apparently enraged that her smear campaign hadn't worked, she escalated dramatically. One evening, about 2 weeks after they'd left, Dad and I were having dinner at his house when there was a loud knock at the door. Dad opened it to find 2 police officers and a woman in business casual attire. "Sir, we're responding to a report of elder abuse," one officer said. "This is Mrs. Johnson from Adult Protective Services. We need to come in and speak with you." Dad was stunned, but stepped aside to let them in. I introduced myself and asked what was going on. "We received a report that an elderly man at this address is being financially exploited and isolated from family by his daughter," the APS worker explained, looking at me. "We're required to investigate all such claims." It was immediately clear what had happened. My sister had reported me for the very thing she had been doing herself. It was a classic case of projection and retaliation. Dad was indignant. "That's absurd. My daughter has been protecting me from exploitation, not causing it. The APS worker nodded. We understand, sir. We're just doing our job by following up. Would you mind if we ask you some questions? The next hour was surreal as Dad explained the actual situation. How my sister and her husband had moved in, taken advantage of him financially, and then retaliated when he set boundaries. I showed them the documentation we had gathered, including the financial records, and the letter from our attorney responding to my sister's demands. The officers and APS worker exchanged looks. This isn't the first time we've seen something like this, the APS worker said. Unfortunately, family financial exploitation is common, and when the exploiters are confronted, they sometimes try to deflect by accusing others. Will my sister face any consequences for filing a false report? I asked. The worker shook her head. The report is confidential, and there's no penalty for reports made in good faith, even if they turn out to be unfounded. Our concern is making sure your father is safe, which he clearly is. Before leaving, they gave Dad some resources on protecting himself from financial exploitation and suggested that he might want to consider additional security measures given the situation. After they left, Dad collapsed into his armchair, looking exhausted. I never thought it would come to this, he said. My own daughter calling the authorities on you for helping me. She's desperate, I said, trying to stay calm despite my anger. She's lost her free ride and she's lashing out. But this proves we made the right decision. The next day, we took the APS workers' advice and installed security cameras at Dad's house. It was a good thing we did, because a few days later, while Dad was at his rescheduled doctor's appointment and I was at work, the cameras caught my sister and brother-in-law trying to enter the house with what looked like a spare key. They couldn't get in because we'd changed the locks, but the attempt was clearly recorded. We reported this to the police, who took it seriously given the escalating pattern of behavior. They agreed to do extra patrols past Dad's house for a while and suggested we consider a restraining order if things got worse. At this point, I was beyond angry. This was no longer about setting boundaries. My sister was actively trying to harass and intimidate Dad, potentially even planning to take things from his house. It was time to stop playing defense. I called our attorney again and explained everything that had happened. The smear campaign, the false APS report, and now the attempted entry. She listened carefully, then gave us some options. A restraining order is certainly on the table, she said. But given the financial issues and their apparent desperation, I'd also recommend we send a more comprehensive legal notice. We can make it clear that any further harassment, defamation, or attempts to enter the property will result in legal action not just for a restraining order, but for the recovery of all money they've taken, plus damages for emotional distress and defamation. Let's do it, I said without hesitation. Dad agreed. The attorney drafted a stern cease and desist letter, detailing every instance of harassment and financial exploitation, with dates, amounts, and evidence. It made it clear that while Dad wished to maintain a relationship with his grandchildren, any further hostile actions would result in immediate legal proceedings. The letter was delivered by a process server to ensure they couldn't deny receiving it. The effect was immediate. The harassment stopped. No more calls from family members repeating lies. No more legal threats. No more attempts to enter Dad's house. It was almost eerie how quickly they backed down when faced with serious consequences. A week later, my aunt called to tell us that my sister and her family had finally moved out of her house too, apparently having found an apartment. She didn't know where exactly, but it was somewhere in the city. For the first time in months, Dad could relax in his own home. The peace and quiet were remarkable. His energy returned, he started seeing his friends again, and he even joined a senior center for activities. The financial pressure was gone too. Without 4 extra people to support, his budget went back to being manageable. About a month after everything quieted down, we received an unexpected call. It was my brother-in-law, sounding uncharacteristically humble. I want to talk, he said. Just me. No drama. Can I meet with you both? Dad and I were skeptical, but agreed to meet him at a public cafe. When he arrived, he looked different. Tired, yes, but also somehow more mature. He got straight to the point. I owe you both an apology, he said, looking genuinely contrite. The way we behaved in your house was wrong. The way we reacted when you set boundaries was worse. I've had a lot of time to think, and I'm ashamed of my behavior. Dad and I exchanged surprised looks. This was the last thing we expected. What brought this on? I asked cautiously. He sighed. Reality hit hard. Your aunt kicked us out. We had to scramble to find an apartment we could actually afford. For the first time, I'm working a real job, not just talking about business ideas. He paused. And to be honest, your sister and I are having problems. All this stress, actually having to be responsible. It's shown me that our relationship isn't very healthy. I'm sorry to hear that, Dad said, and I knew he meant it. Despite everything, he still cared about my sister. The thing is, my brother-in-law continued, I miss having a relationship with you. The kids miss their grandpa. I was hoping we could work something out. Maybe supervised visits at first until we rebuild trust. Dad's face lit up at the mention of the grandkids. I'd like that, he said cautiously. I was more skeptical. What about my sister? Does she feel the same way? He looked down at his coffee. She's not ready to apologize yet. She still feels justified in everything she did. But she agreed to let me bring the kids to see their grandpa if you're both okay with it. We discussed the details and agreed to a trial visit that weekend at a park. My brother-in-law would bring the kids, and Dad could spend time with them while I kept an eye on things from a distance. The visit went surprisingly well. The kids were thrilled to see their grandpa, and my brother-in-law kept his word, staying respectful and letting Dad enjoy his time with the grandchildren. We agreed to make it a regular thing, every other weekend. Over the following months, a new normal emerged. Dad got to maintain his relationship with his grandkids without the financial strain and drama of having my sister's family living with him. My brother-in-law continued to be respectful during these visits, occasionally even apologizing again for specific things they had done. My sister, however, remained absent. She refused to see Dad or me, sending the kids with her husband instead. According to my brother-in-law, she was working a retail job now, but still feeling bitter about how things had turned out. 6 months after they moved out, we received a surprising letter in the mail. It was a check for $500 with a note that simply said, "First payment. More to come. Thanks for your patience." It was signed by my brother-in-law. Dad called him to ask about it. "It's the beginning of paying back what we owe you," he explained. "It's not much yet, but I got a promotion at work, and I want to make things right. It might take years, but I'm going to repay everything we took." Dad was touched. "You don't have to do this all at once," he said. "Small payments are fine." "I know," my brother-in-law replied, "but I want to. It's the right thing to do." A year after the big blow-up, things have settled into a peaceful routine. Dad is thriving in his independence, with a busy social calendar and regular visits with his grandkids. He's even started dating a lovely woman from his senior center. My brother-in-law has continued making monthly payments toward what they owed, now up to $700 a month as his job situation improved. He's also become more independent from my sister, often bringing the kids on his own and confiding in Dad about the ongoing issues in their marriage. As for my sister, she's still refusing to speak to us directly, but there are signs of change. She stopped bad-mouthing us to family. She got a better job. And recently she sent Dad a birthday card with a brief note. "Still working through my feelings, but I miss you. Maybe someday soon we can talk." It's not a perfect ending. Family rarely is, but it's a vast improvement from where we were. Dad is healthy, happy, and financially secure. The grandkids have a good relationship with him. My brother-in-law is making amends and growing as a person. Even my sister seems to be slowly coming around. I learned a lot from this experience. I learned how important it is to set firm boundaries with family, especially when financial exploitation is involved. I learned that sometimes the most loving thing you can do for someone is to stop enabling their harmful behavior. And I learned that with patience and persistence, even the most difficult family situations can improve. As for me, I got that second promotion at work, and I'm enjoying the peace of knowing that Dad is safe and happy. Sometimes standing up for what's right means facing conflict and drama, but in the end, it was worth it. We all came out better on the other side, even my sister, though she might not admit it yet. Dad said something the other day that really stuck with me. We were sitting on his porch, watching the grandkids play in the yard while my brother-in-law grilled burgers. "You know," he said, "sometimes love means saying no. I should have set boundaries years ago. Would have saved us all a lot of pain." I squeezed his hand. "Better late than never, Dad." And looking at the peaceful scene before us, I knew that was true. Better late than never, indeed. Update. 6 months later. I wanted to give you all an update on the situation with my sister, brother-in-law, and Dad, because something major happened last month that I never saw coming. After almost 18 months of not speaking directly to me or Dad, my sister finally reached out. She texted me asking if we could meet for coffee, just the two of us. I was cautious but agreed. When I arrived at the cafe, I almost didn't recognize her. She'd lost weight, cut her hair, and had this completely different energy about her. But the biggest shock came when she opened her mouth. "I'm sorry," she said before I'd even sat down. "I'm so sorry for everything." I was stunned. My sister had never apologized to me for anything in our entire lives. She explained that she and my brother-in-law had been in couples therapy for several months. Another shock. And she'd also started individual therapy. "I've had to face some hard truths about myself," she said, her voice cracking. "The therapist helped me see patterns from our childhood that I was repeating. I thought I was entitled to Dad's support because I was the favorite growing up. I expected everyone to cater to me like Mom and Dad did. It wasn't fair to you, it wasn't fair to Dad, and worst of all, it was teaching my kids terrible lessons." We talked for 3 hours. She told me that the apartment situation had been a wake-up call. For the first time in her life, she had to actually budget, pay bills on time, and live within her means. It was hard, but she discovered she was capable of more than she thought. And watching how my husband stepped up while I was still blaming everyone else made me realize how childish I was being, she admitted. The most surprising part came next. She pulled out an envelope and slid it across the table. Inside was a check for $5,000. "This is from me, not from him," she said firmly. "I've been putting aside money from every paycheck. It's not everything we owe Dad yet, but it's a start." I asked if she wanted to give it to Dad herself, and she nodded nervously. "I'd like to see him, if he's willing. I don't expect forgiveness right away, but I want to start making amends." The meeting between her and Dad happened the next day. There were tears on both sides. Dad, being Dad, tried to give her the check back, saying the apology was enough, but she refused to take it. "This isn't just about the money," she insisted. "It's about respecting you and taking responsibility for my actions." Since then, things have been cautiously improving. My sister has started joining the weekend visits with the kids. She's respectful of Dad's boundaries and no longer asks for anything. She and I are rebuilding our relationship slowly. We'll probably never be best friends, but we're finding a way to be sisters again. The biggest change is in her relationship with her children. She's more involved, more patient, and actually parenting them rather than pawning them off on others. The kids seem happier and more well-behaved. As for my brother-in-law, he and my sister are still working on their marriage. He told Dad privately that they nearly divorced, but the therapy has been helping. They're learning to communicate better and share responsibilities. The most wonderful moment came last weekend when they invited Dad over to their apartment for dinner for the first time. They wanted to show him how they were managing on their own. Dad said their place was small but clean and homey, and they'd prepared a nice meal without any drama or expectations. "They're growing up," he told me afterward, his eyes misty. "Finally growing up. I'm not naive enough to think everything is permanently fixed, but I'm cautiously optimistic. People can change when they're faced with real consequences and then do the hard work of self-reflection. My sister is doing that work now, and it shows." As for Dad, he's absolutely thriving. His relationship with the lady from the senior center is getting serious. They're talking about taking a cruise together next year. His health has improved without the stress. And he's even thinking about volunteering at a local school as a reading mentor. I've learned that sometimes what seems like a terrible family crisis can actually be the beginning of healing. If we hadn't stood up to my sister's entitled behavior, everyone would still be stuck in those toxic patterns. The short-term pain and conflict were worth the long-term growth and peace. So that's where we stand now. Imperfectly healing, cautiously reconnecting, and all of us much better off than we were when this saga began. Sometimes standing your ground is the most loving thing you can do, even when it hurts. Anyway, thank you for watching.